Okay, chapter 14 is about control. Now, if you do remember, we had the functions of management, which starts off from planning. So when you plan and you want to achieve something as an organization, you try to organize work, you need to create the structure, you need to have the right set of people. You also have to bring about resources, create an organization structure, and you need to have individuals who are motivated, the right set of people, bring in teams together. Leadership is important. Put all that directing part together, so planning, organizing, directing, and then eventually when you implement your plans, when you start working on your plans, you got to measure what is that you planned and what did you achieve. So when you measure against a certain standard, you set a goal and what did you achieve? So that is where you're, using the function which we call as controlling. You need to control your activity. You need to control resources. You need to control the direction that the organization is going towards achieving those goals. So obviously controlling is such an important function, as important as planning is. Most people think, oh, we plan and we execute the plan. It is the most important thing is done. No, controlling is very, very important. Collecting data, taking reports, asking for suggestions, taking feedback from your employees, going around and meeting people, talking to customers, talking to your other stakeholders, looking at your own organizational processes, and seeing how much of innovation is really required to keep our customers happy. All these elements are important elements of controlling. Controlling doesn't mean I control you, you control me. It's not like that. Controlling is about the goals and seeing how much of the goals have been achieved. If there is a gap between the target performance and the actual performance, what is causing this gap? What are the reasons that we are not able to achieve everything that we want to achieve as a company? And are there reasons that can be fixed? Can we have some remedial action? Can we need some more resources? Do we need to hire right set of people, or do we have to change our strategy and approach in trying to close the gap between your targeted performance and your actual performance? That is such an important element for every manager and every leader in the organization. So controlling is an extremely important chapter. So let's start off with the slides. So the learning objectives, the nature and importance of controlling. I think I just mentioned how important controlling is, because you set standards, you set goals, then you start, trying to work towards those goals, and you're measuring your performance. Every now and then you measure how much of the goal has been achieved. Are we on target? And then find out reasons if you're not able to meet those targets. And if there are reasons that can be fixed, fix them now. Or sometimes you might have to revise the goals. Sometimes goals may be, not realistic. Goals might be too difficult to achieve, or the pandemic might have changed the whole environment itself. Then you need to revisit the goals. So it might work both ways. You might want to change your strategy trying to achieve those goals. You might want to give more resources, put more effort in trying to reach those goals, or you might have to lower the goals a bit because of whatever has happened and how the industry is working, how the external environment is reacting. You might have to revise those goals. So we are also going to discuss today the 3 steps in the control process. So what are the 3 steps? What do we do in controlling? And we'll also discuss the different types of controls organizations and managers can generally use. And we'll also talk about the different challenges and issues that you have as a manager when you're exercising the function called controlling. So the first objective is obviously explaining the nature and importance of control. As I was mentioning, controlling is as important as planning. The planning is supremely important, because if you don't have a plan, how do you execute anything? Where is that you're going to put your efforts and time? And where do you invest in terms of skill, and where you would invest your knowledge and competences? So you need to have a clear vision, have a mission, and have your strategic goals and financial goals set in place. And then you should have goals at the corporate level, have goals at the different business level. Each business has different functions. Those departments can have goals, and those goals can be broken down into team goals, and team goals can be broken down into individual goals or key performance indicators. So planning is very important, but how much of those targeted goals are being achieved? Would you want to review them, measure them every 3 months, every quarter? Do you want to review them twice a year? Do you want to review them annually? What is that you're doing? So you have to plan properly to make sure that you are on course and you are able to get closer to your goals quarter after quarter or month after month, and towards achieving your annual goals, whether short-term goals or long-term goals for the company. It's extremely important. Yeah, so here is a manager asking his team members, so what has been achieved? What were the goals that we set forth? Where are we right now? Do we have any challenges that we need to take care of? Should we change our approach? Should we require some other resources? Do you have suggestions to give? Do you have some ideas to share? Can we all be part of a decision which will get closer to achieving those goals? I'm just making up a story looking at the picture, guys. So, you know, this particular way of telling a story by looking at a picture. I'm typing that in the chat. It's called the thematic perception test, sometimes also referred to as TAT. So just looking at this picture, your professor is making up a story. Here is a boss, here is a manager who's just called in his team members to just take a review, take stock of what is going on, how much of the progress has been made towards achieving those goals. Do we have some challenges in terms of technology, in terms of competition, in terms of the pandemic, the macro environment? Is there something that we need to be bothered about or concerned about? Should we work on certain strategies so that we are on course of achieving those goals? That stock taking, that taking information, that looking at reports and making sure you're having remedial measures in place, that process is important. So communicating with people and taking in data, assessing, analyzing stuff becomes integral to every function of management. And it's very integral to controlling as well. So let's go further. So the importance of control again. So the planning controlling link, as I was explaining. So you plan, you organize, you lead or direct, and then you control. These are the 4 functions where we are talking in the entire course. Whole of this course, Management 102, we're just discussing planning. So basically we are planning, and then we decide our goals and objectives, strategies, and plans. That's what we set for ourselves at the corporate level, at business level, at department level, and then team level, individual levels. We have these goals which are set. And then how do we get this done? How do we mobilize action? We need to create an organization structure, make sure who is responsible for what, allocate resources, and have a clearly assigned authority, responsibility, relationships. And then, of course, staff right set of people, give them the training, motivate them, have opportunities to recognize their hard work and their achievements, celebrate their success. That becomes part of the HR. You need to lead them, just not manage them. You need to be a role model, inspire them, motivate them. Leadership is a very, very important function of any manager. Communicate in every level. You need to communicate for sure. And then individual and group behavior. Obviously, we are interested in having the right set of people with the right attitude. And also we need to understand teams are important. Cohesiveness in teams. As a team, we can achieve a lot. As individuals, we cannot do as much. So all those become part of leading as a function. And then comes the important element called, we are in the last leg of this course. I have this chapter, and next class I have in the last chapter. We are done for this semester in terms of teaching. So I'll get back to you, say to discuss anything that you want about your projects. If you want something about your career, you want to know something beyond the classroom, anything, I'm available every class. I'll be happy to talk to you and help with you and work. We can work in breakout rooms. And I just think that I have so much to share. So anybody who is interested to stay back after, this week to come and take classes and attend something, you can ask me anything that I know. I'm not saying I know everything. I know very little, but that little I'm happy to share with you guys. So controlling comes in here. We're talking of standards, what goals, how do we measure them? How do we compare them against the standards? And of course, if we find a gap, what kind of remedial measures or actions that we will take, to make sure that those goals, objectives are being achieved. So the 3 steps in control process. This looks very complicated, but it isn't. If you pay close attention, I hope you are, you will find it terribly easy. So goals are set, you understand. And from the goals, you know what is, for each goal, what is the standard accepted level of performance for each goal. Suppose you say GPA. You're a student of the undergraduate program at New York Tech. What do you think is the basic amount of GPA that you should have? Any guess? What's the minimum standard GPA that is acceptable for you?
Let's say anything above 3.5.
Wow, that's cool, Eric. I'm happy you said that, but you know, a minimum is a 3 GPA if you want to get admission into a graduate program. Did you know this? Did you know that you need a minimum GPA of 3 to get admitted into a graduate program?
Yes.
Cool. I'm happy you know that. So I would think that's the minimum. And as Eric was pointing out, maybe 3.5, hopefully even beyond that. So you can have an accepted level, a minimum level, a real good level of performance. So set the standards where you want to compare actual performance with those standards. So comparing performance is the second thing that you measure actual performance. So where are we? And compare your actual performance with the standard that you have set for yourself. So from here, the standard is going there. From your actual performance, it's going here. You make the comparison here. Once you compare, you're asking yourself this question: is the standard being attained? Have we achieved that standard? Are we able to meet those standards? If the answer is yes, you do nothing, you're happy. You set a high standard, your actual performance is meeting the standard. So, and the answer is yes, the standards are being met. Maybe you're exceeding, far exceeding the standards in this case. You don't have to do anything. But if the standard being attained, the answer is no. There is a variation. There is a 10%. I expected 3.75. I'm getting only, say, 3.5. There is a variation. My standard, acceptable standards, no, my set standards is 3.75. My actual performance is only 3.5. So between 3.75 and 3.5, is it acceptable? If the answer is yes, okay, you're fine. You're still ready to go. But if the answer is no, then is this standard, is that variance accepted? Is the standard accepted? You have to ask yourself that variation, is that okay or not? Is that standard okay or not? Both, you're looking at both things. The variation between whatever standards that you set for yourself and the actual performance. And you're also asking, is that particular standard also acceptable or not? So if the answer is yes, then look at the cause, what is causing this variation? Is it because the professor doesn't teach you well? Is it because we went on Zoom, so you don't have access to information? You don't have access to library? What other extraneous factors are affecting causing that variation in the GPA? Or is it just you don't have the energy, you have too many responsibilities at home, and that's causing the variation? Or sometimes you just have too many courses to take. You can't focus on all the courses. Some courses, are more demanding in that sense. Is that causing the variation? So next semester you take less number of courses. You have more time for yourself to spend on each of the course. What is that you have to do? That is correcting the performance. And sometimes you might have to go back and look at revising the standard because the standard might not be acceptable. You go here and say, no, that standard is too unreasonable. If you set a standard of 4 GPA for every student, 4 out of 4, well, 4 on 4 is not going to be possible for all of you. When you take 120 credits in your bachelor's program, to maintain a 4 GPA, that means you have to be scoring A on every course. It's unrealistic standards. So we have to look at and say, no, we cannot expect a standard performance as 4 GPA for all students. It's just not doable. It's not realistic. So I might have to revise the standards. So this is how the controlling happens. You set goals, you set the standard, you measure your actual performance, compare your actual performance with the standard, and then ask yourself, these questions as you cascade it downwards. If the standard is being attained, you have to do nothing. If that variance is acceptable, you don't do anything. And you're also asking yourself, is that particular standard accepted? If it's yes, and then there is a variation, obviously you have to look at what's causing that variation. And because that variation is not acceptable for you, you have to do some correction. Or sometimes you might have to, if the standard is not acceptable, you have to revise the standard. Both ways, you're taking the corrective action. One, you're changing the standards. Another one, you're making the performance get better by making corrections to the performance itself. Now, how do you measure performance? You can get that from personal observation, managing by walking around. It's called MBWA, management by walking around. So I can walk around as a leader, as a manager in the shop floor. I can see places, I can see people working, and I can say, oh, these things have to be changed. You know, the best part is if you're having a restaurant business, for example, my brother's son is starting off a coffee shop in India. So he's got a beautiful plan. He's actually constructing the coffee shop. You know, the design is very contemporary, the waiting area, the lounge, and everything is so beautifully done. So I was telling him, you have a great business idea. The design, the layout, the infrastructure is great. The chef is there, and then, you know, the crew members are there, the employees are there, the furniture is there, everything is great. I told them, you need to be there every single day. Because unless you are there personally to go to customers, to visit each table once in a while at least, and ask them about the quality of the service, if they require something, are they happy with the kind of, you know, taking orders, promptness of, you know, serving, and then the kind of quality in the dishes, the hygiene itself, meeting up the standards with, you know, no, that kind of interaction with the owner of the restaurant is extremely important. So I was telling him personal observation is mandatory. Otherwise, restaurants have a very short life cycle. You start a restaurant, it takes off, it grows for a while, and then it stagnates, it plateaus there, and then it starts declining. 3 years, the restaurant is gone, it's closed. So I was telling my brother's son, he's going to start off in May, because that's when he'll be done with everything, furnishing the whole restaurant. I told him, you have to be there every single day. Control. Look at the quality every single day. Make sure no customer goes out feeling dissatisfied. If they're not happy with a dish, can you provide them with another replacement? Something complimentary, just to make them feel good and not go with that, you know, bad taste. That shouldn't happen. So there's nothing like, you know, measuring performance. You have to be there. You can't simply say, I'll give it to somebody and I'll pay them to do the job. You have to be there around. So managing by walking around, very important technique to just have some personal observation and have a chance to interact with employees as much as have an opportunity to interact with customers, take their feedback. And if there is something that you can fix it, fix it. Do not wait for 10 customers to go away from your restaurant unhappy. Every dissatisfied customer is going to go and tell 10 other people that this is not a nice place to go and eat your food or spend your weekend. You want your customers to walk out feeling good, you know, time well spent, value for money, good taste, great quality service, you know, nice place. So you want everybody to go with this wonderful feeling that this evening wasn't, you know, a sheer waste of time and money. So obviously, I'm just trying to tell you how important controlling is, and the information can come from observation, statistical reports. Suppose you have a production line. You're having thousands of cars manufactured every day, like say Toyota or Honda or General Motors. They manufacture hundreds and thousands of cars, like Tesla. So they are generating plenty of statistical reports. Every component that's coming in, how every little inventory is being managed, how the production lines are working, how the quality control checks are happening. So they generate plenty of statistical reports. Now you're asking yourself, what's the variation? I know, for example, you know, anybody who's making the components for Tesla car, they just don't have any margin for error. Every component is precisely same. There's no margin for error. It has to be precisely the same thing. These are called precision tools that they're manufacturing. So high level of quality control is there just to make sure your finished product, you know, performs as delivered and as promised. And your customers are supremely happy and they want to go and talk and feel proud that they're owners of a car like Tesla, for example. So statistical report, statistical quality control, it's called SQC. I don't know if it's there on these slides. Statistical quality control has been for ages used in industry, and it's been replaced by many other things like Six Sigma and plenty of other quality control tools. Oral reports, people telling you, customers telling you something, they're putting testimonials there, they're writing you feedback. I think these are valuable pieces, nuggets of information. Any customer who's complaining, you cannot look at him and say, he's a customer who complains too much. He's whining for no reason. You can't discount any customer. Every customer is important. And maybe they have a perspective, they have a different approach to consuming a product or looking at your service. You got to listen to them. And then understand, what is that I can take from customers? How do I organize that inputs and data from customers into changes and incremental improvements in the product? That's what we call in management terms as quality function deployment, QFD. It's called quality function deployment. When I listen to my customers, I can take in all kinds of feedback and make a product. I need to categorize. Somebody is talking about the design. Somebody is talking about user interface. Somebody is talking about the bugs or the processing speed. Somebody talks about the ergonomics, how each of those buttons are placed and layout. So all that, durability, quality, user interface, you categorize data, which areas we are going to make improvements in the product design, and say the user interface, in the service quality. That's what we're taking information, putting it into the product and making incremental improvements. That's what we call as quality function deployment. How does that come? By listening to people, customers, stakeholders, people who are experts in that particular industry. When they use your product, what do they tell you? What is their user experience? Just not your own statistical reports, but also listening to people, to employees, to customers. You need to listen. Generally, we are used to talking like the way I'm talking today, but we don't want to pay attention, and we are not patient enough to listen. But as a company, as a business, you have to listen. Written reports, of course, you generate a lot of sales reports, financial reports, accounting reports. People telling you, this is our working capital, this is our inventory management, this is our sales turnover. They give you all kinds of ratios. So financial reports, sales reports, internal process reports. All these reports are also going to be huge sources of information other than just personal observation. Any questions till now? Okay, criteria for measurement. What managers measure is probably more important to the control process and how they measure. We always say we measure it by using these tools. We have the tools. But what are we measuring? Suppose, say, for example, this class is there. You're 23 students or 24 students in my class. I just finished my chapters. I taught my 14 or 15 chapters. Is that enough? As a teacher, should I not measure whether my students really understood what I was talking? Did they take something from the class? Can they apply some of it in their workplace? Can they use it when they have their own startup company? Is this really going to help them? I think I should ask you questions. And I should really talk to you, not to intimidate you, not to punish you, but to simply say, I'm here to make an impact. I want to make sure that you're spending your time and money in the right thing. So if you're taking my course, I think the greatest impact is when my students say, sir, we have benefited something. We can use it in our personal life. We can use it at our workplace. These things are important for me to understand how businesses operate, how organizations work, how teams work, how leadership is important, how planning is important, how controlling is important. I really learned. And tomorrow, if I become a manager, when I have my own company, I know a little bit more. And these things really help. If you tell me that, and if say majority of you tell me that, I would say, wow, we measured the right things, and students did not waste their money and their time in just taking a management 102 course, which they learned nothing from. So I think the criteria for measurement is that you should be able to have an ongoing relationship with your professor in terms of you taking his advice and asking him, sir, I'm at work, I have a problem. Can you think you can come up with something out of the box and help me? Or I have a plan to do business. You might want to give me some advice on this. If I become a consultant, a personal consultant for you, I think that's a great measure of the impact that I've created on you. So I don't know. I look at teaching as a very different thing. I'm not I'm not conventional like other teachers are. That's what I want to believe. And I think about my profession really passionately. I love teaching. And to be honest, I teach not just from a book, I teach from my experience, and I teach from the love for the field of management. So what you measure, very, very important. This is what I was talking about, statistical quality control. The acceptable limit is here, upper limit is here, the standard is here, and the lower level limit is here in terms of quality. And one product is here below the standard, one product is above the standard, but they're all variation is within that acceptable range. If this can be very, very small, by the way. This range which we're talking, you might think it's very big. No. If you're making a mobile phone, for example, it has to look and feel, and the size, dimension, performance, durability has to be precisely the same. This variation is very, very small. Apple phones are Apple phones anywhere. You buy them in China, you buy them in Brazil, you buy them in the United States. They look, feel, operate, function exactly the same because this range is very, very small. The variation that is acceptable is so small. So, this yellow part may be even more narrow. It looks very broad here so that you understand the variation is okay in that range. It cannot be above this. It cannot get into this purple or magenta. It has to remain in this, mustard yellow, either above the standards or below the standard. It cannot get here. If it gets here, rejected. This product is a rejected product. Right? The quality control is so stringent, and that's what makes great companies. If you're going to throw garbage at your customers, they're not going to come back to you. Leave alone coming back to you, they're going to talk terrible things about you. The word of mouth publicity is going to be terrible. You don't want that to happen because your customer is your biggest, advocate. You want your customer to go about freely advertising for you, publicizing your product, tell great things about the product, and also tell great things about the service that you offer, and tell what a great company you have, and what kind of people work with you, and the kind of quality products that you give. And every time the surprising elements that are there, pleasant surprises that you have in terms of service quality. So this margin which is there for error is extremely narrow. So that's what we do in terms of statistical quality control. Stringent measures are there. Why is China a hub of manufacturing? Because historically we've seen, I've talked to so many people across. They say Chinese employees, workers are so fast and so efficient, and they manage to actually stick on to that small acceptable variation. The standards are so good, the quality is so good. And historically, we know, all of us know, that made in Japan was like a brand. I still purchase products which are made in Japan. I'm not sure if I'm lucky every time whether I get the highest quality if it is made in Japan, but this notion, made in Japan, is a brand that they stand for very stringent standards of quality. I still have cameras and lenses made in Japan. So it just makes me feel, I feel more assured. When I spend $1,000 in buying a camera lens, and if it's made in Japan, I'm like, oh, must be high quality. Like Rolls-Royce, for example, and say Volvo, safety, Rolls-Royce, precision engineering. And you might have other, BMW or Mercedes or, German engineering kind of stuff. So these things give you that added sense of assuredness as a customer because they're following very stringent standards of quality control. Anyway, here is a simple example for you, which talks about sales. This is a sales for a company that sells gardening supplies and products and seeds and stuff like that. So what are the products that this company is selling? Because they're Green Earth Gardening Supply, the company's name. They sell vegetable plants, perennial flowers, annual flowers, herbs, flowering bulbs, flowering bushes, and heirloom seeds, and stuff like that. So these are the standards. By the way, in your original slides, this was 612. This is strange. There was a typo here. It's 1075 is the standard. The actual performance is 913. Within parentheses is the shortage. They're underselling. Vegetable plants, they were planning to sell 1075. They could only sell 913. We want to find out why. Is it because of the climate? Or is it because of the rainfall? Or is it because people are not going out to do so much of plantation because of the pandemic? Is it a global phenomena? Is it only a phenomena in the Northeast? Or is it a phenomena only confined to New York? What is causing this shortage in actual sales of vegetable plants? There's a considerable shortage. It's like about 10%. The standards is this. They're almost like a little bit more than 10% short on their targets. Perennial flowers, they're okay. They're actually better than the standard by 4. 800 is the annual flowers. They're above the standard 112. We don't have to do much. We don't have to be worried. Keep up the good job. Herbs, they're selling short. They're selling short by 20. The standard is 160. We only managed to sell only 140. Why? Can we fix it? Maybe we can. What should we do? Should we revise the standard because we cannot sell? This is a non-realistic standard. Or can we do something to support our sales guys who are selling herbs? So the same is the case with everywhere. Wherever we have shortage, which is represented in a parenthesis, you have to look at it and ask yourself, is there something that we can help our sales guys, or marketing should be better, advertising should be better, or are we approaching the right outlets? What is going on? Or is there something that we don't have to worry, and we might revise the standard as 220 so that we are meeting the standards, because we know 225 is just above the range. 220 itself is too much. Maybe that's the case. You never know. So correcting performance, how do you do that? Immediate corrective action. Now, guys, if you actually ask me questions, if you talk a lot in class, it gives me a chance to correct if I think, you need correction. I'm not saying what you think is wrong, but I can tell you, yeah, your approach is right, but there may be other approaches to doing something when you talk. But if you didn't talk, I'll not have this chance of immediately correcting you. Sometimes correcting performance need not be immediate. Basic correction in terms of, how you're planning your product portfolio, how do you do your manufacturing, how do you do inventory control? Maybe there are things that you are beyond just sales. So basic correction in the organization's, strategies and approaches of how they manage each of those functions of production, marketing, finance, and accounting. Revising standards, as I said, sometimes standards might have to be changed. Suppose I put a standard for all of you as 4 GPA. It's unrealistic standard. Nobody gets a 4 GPA that easily. You'll have 1 or 2 exceptional people, but yeah, exceptions are exceptions. It's not applicable for all. So we want to discuss the third learning objective, which is discussing the types of controls organizations and managers can use. This is important. There are 3 types of feedback, or three types of control. One is the feed forward. This is when you're anticipating problems. Even before you start doing something, you should be able to anticipate problems. How many of you actually anticipated the kind of impact that the pandemic will have? I'm just asking you a question.
What was the question? Anticipated what now?
The kind of problems that companies will have because of the pandemic.
All financial for sure, to be sure. The whole restaurant industry. I would imagine logistics, transportation, supply, stuff like that. I still don't think we've seen the full effects of it.
Tourism, there is so much to do with employment. That means it's going to have an impact on housing. It has impact on travel. It has impact on so many things, even in education, right? A lot of students who had to put their education on hold because parents have lost jobs, or financials are difficult. It just has such a, what do you call, domino effect, one industry affecting the other. So obviously, I saw this coming long time ago, including what was coming for universities. Small, not financially strong universities are going to struggle to survive because, you have these issues with travel, you have issues which could be financial, issues that have, emotional insecurities of traveling to another country during the pandemic, all this put together, and then put the political situations between countries. You're looking at, a drop in numbers in terms of students coming in. So I saw the problems happening way, way beyond even the pandemic hit, because you start looking at all the macro variables, and the pandemic made it even worse very, very quickly. So, and as you said, you rightly pointed out, the full effects of it maybe are still down the lane, and then we are not yet prepared for the full hit. So that's feed forward. The more you can anticipate, I think the better prepared you are trying to minimize the negative effect of the problem itself. And that's what we call as feed forward. Not easy, because you're forecasting, you're looking at what you anticipate in the future. And that means you need to size up the situation for the future. You should anticipate what your competition is going to do. You got to anticipate also how things are going to pan out in terms of macroeconomic variables before you start giving inputs. At the input level, you start making changes. That's what we call as feed forward control. How do we use our resources? How do we use our equipment, infrastructure, and assets in ways that we can minimize the problems that we anticipate for the future? That requires a lot of visioning. That requires a lot of data and data analysis and plenty of experience and intuition. Maybe then you can mitigate the effect of these anticipated problems to a certain degree. So that's what we call as feed forward. We generally hear feedback. That is, after something has happened, you take report, you take stock, you understand the data, and then you figure out something. So you're making corrections after something has happened. That's what we call as feedback. Feedback is once you have the output, that's when you have feedback. And then oh, this caused the problem. This is causing issues in sales. This is causing issues in quality. This is causing issues in manufacturing, or the kind of technology issues that are causing delays. You kind of do feedback only once you have the output. That's what we often listen about feedback. We barely listen to the word feed forward, which is an extremely important thing. I think leadership comes here. When I say leadership, it's not one individual, but the kind of people that you have, the team that you have, which can support your feed forward activities. That's extremely important. Feedback, you understand, correcting problems, which we discussed right from the first minute we started this class. Then there's something in between, which we call as concurrent control. Suppose, as I said, in my brother's son's case, he's my nephew. If I have to tell him, why don't you walk around? I've been to a restaurant in Manhattan pre-COVID, and I had the owner of the restaurant come to us and talk to us. It's called Divya's Kitchen, and she's an American lady, but this restaurant serves Indian food, and she loves Indian food, and she's an expert. She's the owner of, I don't know how many stores, how many outlets of her restaurant, but she's still had the time to come around and say, are you comfortable? Are you happy with the food? How is the taste? Should we? And she was actually happy to offer something complimentary as a new dish without charging. So all these are concurrent control. You're controlling customer experience. You're controlling the quality of the service that's being offered. You're controlling the preparation, the processes. You're controlling hygiene and all the safety and those kind of issues. This happens when the process is actually going on. That's what we call as concurrent control, and it corrects problems as they happen. So you're not waiting for these problems to accumulate, snowball, and then just get out of control. You're controlling them as they happen. You rectify, you create remedial action, you mitigate the damage as much as you can as they happen. I think this is a great thing to do, that you're looking at your processes. It could be manufacturing, service, communication process. All those processes can be controlled as they happen, as they roll out. And that can happen if you have a very active workforce, or you have active management that's there watching over everything. It's not excessive control, but it's just wanting to make sure the quality doesn't suffer, and it's not too late before you have to do drastic things in terms of feedback. Any questions on process and concurrent control? Okay. So this is concurrent control. Suppose you're actually, I've seen concurrent controls in a lot of organizations. Like you have a dashboard, like the one which you see in this picture. You have a dashboard which shows the entire production process. You know where the heat, what is the heat levels in the furnace, what is the water pressure and the steam that's being generated in the furnace, what are the safety standards and what levels each process is happening, chemical process which is happening. I'm talking about the cement industry, a company that was manufacturing cement. The place is dusty, hot, the environment itself is very, very harsh, the actual production of cement. but you have a nice air-conditioned office where you see a dashboard which shows where the clinker or the raw material is entering, where you have a furnace where these chemicals are being mixed, where you have a slurry that's being, it's molten. It's cement when it's actually being manufactured. It's like golden, orange, yellow. It's liquid form. It's extremely hot. The slurry is there, and you're actually getting inputs from the furnace in terms of temperature, pressure, the steam, whatever is happening. And then you control how it comes out, how it's made into pellets, and how those pellets are crushed. And then the first level crushing is done, then smaller pellets are made and it's powdered again, very fine dust of cement comes out. All that process can be seen from a dashboard. And if you require some change, something is going beyond the accepted levels of temperature or pressure, you can stop. Don't put your employees or workers at risk. Rectify this technical issue, and then you can resume process without hurting your production, without hurting your employees or workers. These are very hazardous processes, so you need to keep very tight control. That's what is happening in concurrent control. I think I tried to explain this picture using the cement industry. You can do it for a rocket launch. You can do it for a nuclear power generating company, right? You don't want a Chernobyl type of accident. If you're a nuclear power plant, you got to watch that. The vital readings have to be watched every second. You just can't blink and then when you're getting readings and input from a nuclear power reactor and you just ignore it, you could have a disaster which will destroy a bunch of cities, maybe a state. So you have to have concurrent control. The more dangerous the process is, the more close concurrent control you should have of the processes in the company itself. Feedback, you understand it. Once the activity has happened and the outcomes are there, the numbers are there, the financials are there, accounting numbers are there. You can play with the numbers, calculate a lot of ratios and say, are we doing good? Do we have the money? Are our sales good? What is our lock-in period? Credit sales, what's happening with that? I'm talking finance now, feedback. They say always say financials are lagging indicators. So this is here, it goes, liquidity ratios. What are your current assets versus your current liabilities, which we call as current ratio? Do you have enough money to operate everyday operations? And then that's what means that you have current assets. Do you have liquid cash with you to buy grocery, to pay your merchandise that you buy for your restaurant? If you don't have, you're in trouble. So you want to have a healthy current ratio. And so is the case with debt to assets. You don't want too much of debt because it can be leading to higher interest rates and stuff like that. Of course, it says the higher the ratio, the more leverage the organization, because you don't want to operate with your money. The debt equity ratio generally is 2:1. So they always say you should take some loan because you don't do business with all your money. Some part of it has to be debt. So the higher the ratio, the more leveraged. That means financial companies are interested in giving you loans. Banks are interested in giving you loans. It speaks to the measure of your financial strength in the past and your performance in the past. That's otherwise finance companies and banks don't give you loans. So that's a good thing, but you don't want to go overboard because there is this element here, interest that you might have to pay. Just keep an eye, any borrowings or debt that you have from banks and financial institutions, you have to pay interest. Then there is inventory turnover. How much of sales do you have? How much of inventory? See, when you manufacture finished products and you have them as inventory, you don't want to keep the inventory there in your warehouse without selling them, without being able to sell them. You don't want that. You want your sales to be really high. So obviously, the higher the ratio, the more effective inventory assets are being used. You want your inventory to go from warehouse to your sales points and from sales points to your customers. The faster the inventory gets turned over, the better. That means you're selling really well. And that means your production lines can continue to happen. Total assets versus turnover, that can be there. You're looking at sales versus total assets. So the fewer assets used to achieve that sales. You want to achieve maximum sales using as little assets as possible. I know they're very contradicting in terms of how do you increase your sales with using less amount of assets? That's the key. Suppose there is Prabhakar here. If his class has only 21 students, okay. If his class has 48 students, I have another class with 49 students. The same Prabhakar is teaching Management 102 with only 23 students. The same Prabhakar for the same salary is teaching a class of 49. So which class is better? Where are you using Prabhakar better? You want a class size to be 49, right? So because you're using little assets, which is Prabhakar in this case, because you're paying me, and the sales are what? 49 students. So if imagine your class was also another 49, another class 49, I'll be teaching 150 students for the same one person Prabhakar salary, which is good. That's how you can look at. By the way, accounting is all about numbers. If they pay me X number of dollars, they're saying how many dollars does Prabhakar generate in terms of students taking his class. So if Prabhakar is having a lot of students take his class, we'll keep him because he brings us revenue. But imagine I'm a terrible professor. Nobody wants to take my class. I have 6 in one class, 4 in another class, 3 in another class. Why do they have to keep me? So they'll say, Prabhakar, thank you. You're a nice person, but unfortunately you have to go. So I'm telling you, it's all about accounting is all about looking after your sales and generating as much as revenue as possible. And obviously it means also making sure you have a decent amount of profits that you above average profits. Let me put it this way. You want above average profits just to make sure if you're hit by the pandemic, if you have some seasonality, if you have some issues between US and China, you still will not get hit so bad because you have above average profits. So then profitability is an important thing. Return on investment, net profit after taxes by total number of assets that you might have. That's important because you don't want to invest your money in businesses. Even if I'm a company, I don't want to expand into another business if I don't see a decent return on investment. So that's the key. So obviously budgets. I'm part of, say, budget planning in School of Management, for example. We do plenty of planning. We have a plan for 21, 22 already. And sometimes you have rolling budgets. Sometimes you have standalone budgets. So sometimes you have operational budgets only for operations. Sometimes you have, budgets, capital, investment planning budgets, where you have to buy equipment or hire new faculty or introduce new programs. These are capital expenses. You create new labs. And there are budgets only for operations, like should we give some stipend? Should we have some graduate assistants, so some research assistant positions for students? Should we, do funding of conferences, paper presentations? Do we fund some field trips for students? These are called operational elements of a budget. But if we are thinking of expanding, we open a new location in Abu Dhabi, or we open another location in Jordan, those are capital expenses because new campus, new facilities, new furniture, new software, new faculty, it's a lot of money, new advertising, new marketing, plenty. And then new accreditation in the ministry, local ministry, those are capital expenses. So budgets can be capital budgets, operational budgets, short-term budgets, long-term budgets. So budgets can be a lot, and there's a lot of planning, a lot of controlling. I think you understand MIS, Management Information System applications are huge. The two of the easiest ones I can explain to you are Customer Relationship Management. CRM is an information system. So when you go to a restaurant, you buy you actually book a table, eat food, or you go to a hotel, book a room. All your data is getting into an information system. So obviously when you come next time around, they precisely know your preferences, your tastes. They know what to offer you, how to make you happy, keep you satisfied as a customer. So they know pretty much everything. That's because they are using information system to control services to be provided, product changes to be offered, and to ensure that customer satisfaction is retained. All that's happening because they're controlling offerings of the products, offerings of the service, ensuring high customer quality using information system. This is CRM. And that's a very important thing that they do. Data analytics. Amazon uses plenty of our data to say, okay, here are new deals. Here are things that you've been looking for. The price of this particular product has just gone down. Did you not notice? All kinds of things can happen because companies are using data analytics and data big time to see purchase patterns, to look at customer preferences and days, and to make sure product offerings or service offerings are customized to your tastes and preferences. Information system is such an important tool in control and in rolling out customized things for keeping customers happy. Keeping track of employee performance, that always happens. I also sign off some timesheets for certain staff in School of Management. We all have this portal where we track employees, number of hours, what are the activities they're doing, what tasks they're doing, and if they're satisfying all the checklist, then only I sign off a timesheet for 2 weeks that they get paid for. So if I say, okay, the employee was absent for 2 days, was sick for another 2 days, did not finish this number of hours for a week, I can actually sign off with the lower pay for each of those employees. So tracking employee performance, tracking employee payroll, all that's possible because of information systems, and tracking is done big time. Tracking also happens how you use a company's laptop. Suppose if I'm using New York Tech's laptop, I better use it only for business, because they can track of what websites I'm seeing, how much time do I spend logging into NYT portal or on Canvas, and how much do I time I spend on Amazon and by shopping. So when you use company laptops and stuff like that, they can track a lot of your time, login time, logout time, shopping time, meeting time, serious time, and all kinds of things. If you're on social media doing funny things when you're at workplace using a company laptop, you're being tracked. Okay, be careful, guys. I just gave you a inside piece of information. So that happens. So keeping track also, this is an important thing. This is called as a balanced scorecard. Kaplan and Norton, they were the guys who actually introduced this. So when you talk of controlling, you have standards, you have measures, you have actual performance. You need to know what corrective measures are being taken, what remedial action is being taken for under each of these 4 things. Financials, very important. So what are the targets? What are the measures? What's your actual financials? If there are deviations, how do we make sure next time we do better on these financials? Customers. So do you need X number of new customers? Do you want to retain Y number of old customers? Do you want to introduce X number of new products? Do you want to introduce Y number of new services? How do you track customer satisfaction? How do you take in customer feedback? How do you incorporate that feedback into product improvements? How do you make sure that they're happy and satisfied? They talk good things about us. So customer. So have standards, measure, make sure you make improvements for customer. Internal processes. It could be production process. It could be inventory process, inventory management process. It could be communication process. What are the internal processes which are very important for us as a company, which are core to our business? And those processes, you need to make sure what are the standards, how do we measure process efficiencies, we might have process losses at certain areas, who is the owner of each of those processes, what changes should we make to the process so that efficiency and effectiveness is maintained. So internal processes are always changing because of people, skills, technology, plenty of things. And last one is obviously people, innovation, and growth. Do we have the right set of people? Should they be trained? What skill sets are we looking for? What competences should they have? Are they capable of doing today's jobs? Are they adapted really well? And so obviously we're looking at learning and growth opportunities for our people. So those 4 things that you need to measure to get a balanced scorecard for your company. It's a very extensive process. It's not as simple as the 5 minutes I took in explaining this. Balanced scorecard is a proper 2-day, 8 hours each day kind of training. Consulting companies do it for complete 2 days, 8 hours each day, and very specific to that particular company that you're working for. And if you brought in the consultant, because they have a lot of data, they look at all departments, all businesses, all processes, all of your financials, all your customer feedback and reports and surveys. They look at all that, and then they hammer it back on you, trying to say where exactly we are supposed to improve. So it's a 2-day complete workshop involving top people, middle-level managers, maybe participation from the lower level, so that we understand our company really well and we know exactly what we are going to work for. So the balanced scorecard approach, Kaplan and Norton, a real good one. Guys, when you have time, it's not a bad thing. Just go search Kaplan and Norton's balanced scorecard. This is what you see here. And I can actually put it on the chat of the two guys who actually brought this up. Kaplan and Norton. I know of large conglomerates, big companies using this particular method. So discuss some contemporary issues in controlling, and we will be done shortly, okay? So there are cultural issues, workplace concerns, there can be a lot of cultural differences which can, create problems in types of control that you have. Just give me a second. I'm sorry, I'll have to take a call. So you have that. I was explaining that to you, that is my computer, is my work computer really mine? Do I have a right to privacy at work? Yeah, sometimes it's better off if you want to do something personal, you do it off the grid. You're writing personal emails, you're applying to another job while working for one company. You better do it on your private laptop and in your own private network. Don't do it on the same IP address, and then don't don't apply to another company using your official email if you think that's what you don't want them to know. So it's these things are really a matter of concern. You got to be careful when you do that, because you can be tracked. The time of login, log out, time you spend, everything can be tracked. Yeah, I mentioned that to you. Controlling employee theft. There can be feed forward, there can be concurrent control, you can have feedback. So pre-hiring screening. I'm telling you this one, like when you have a job search for the executive level at the top level, I've seen they will do your screening, looking at your bank records, your criminal history. If you have had cases of sexual harassment, they'll look at your accidents and fines on traffic. They look at every damn thing that you can think of at the executive level. I don't know if you're aware of this. Once you're applying at a top level job, I think even at the middle level, by the way. So they actually, once they're zero down on the top three, they will eventually go back to a proper agency which does this background check. This is what we call as feed forward. You want to make sure 100% you're not hiring a person who is going to deal in stealing information or sharing proprietary technologies. And we have these violations of intellectual property rights. That's a huge thing, even in academics. By the way, if I copy somebody's academic work without properly citing or referencing their name, and if I claim as if somebody else's research is mine, they call it the kiss of death in academics. We'll lose our jobs. So employee theft doesn't have to be stealing only physical things, stealing of knowledge, information, proprietary technologies, patents, and any of that information which you're not supposed to be sharing with others, which is pretty much confidential. You cannot take it away. Treat employees with respect. That's a concurrent thing. When you treat people with respect, they're not going to indulge in deviant behavior. Make sure employees know when theft or fraud has occurred, not naming names, but making sure that people know that they're being watched. Establish policies. That's a feed forward. You have this, what we call as code of ethics. That code of ethics has to be shared with everybody. And the feed forward also includes writing policies. So, by the way, in Abu Dhabi, when we were there, we actually signed a document saying that we will not take gifts from students. Strange, but we did that. So when students came to us when they graduated and offered us chocolates and sweets and desserts or something like that, we had to think twice. Is this going to get counted as a bribe or a gift or something that we are not supposed to be doing? Educate and train employees about the policies. Have professional review of your internal security controls, especially if you're dealing with technologies that are very confidential or formula for certain products that nobody else should share. So these are there. You can read about it. Video surveillance can be done. I've been doing research in school safety in the US. So we have a lot of these things: surveillance, sworn law enforcement officers. We have plenty of parent-teacher associations and conferences. We have several tools to look at metal detectors, places of concern where you have security checks. So all these things are concurrent. Whatever you do every day, daily basis, this is concurrent. So even some of the NYT, New York Tech, NYIT, portal things I cannot access if I'm working from home. I need to go to the Old Westbury campus or Manhattan campus if I need to access certain kinds of data, because they don't want me to use some other insecure IP location where something can get hacked. So say information about student performance, your academic records, that cannot be shared with anybody. They're all confidential. And any data that I have access to, they show it in green, yellow, and red. Green is okay. You can use it for public sharing. Yellow, only some people who are authorized to see that data, you can share it with them. Red, it's completely confidential. You're not supposed to be sharing it with anyone. And you cannot leave that data on a public computer. You got to use it and erase it from there for sure, because it's red. So they classify data, information, documents in different colors, and they make a description of those colors and what it means, because that's concurrent process. And these are all control measures. And also that's what it is all about. Feedback, you might have professional investigators if there is a theft, redesign control measures because you don't have enough control, people are stealing stuff, evaluate your company's culture. So all that can be done as a feedback. I know you might not be very familiar with all this, but this happens all the time. I don't know if you're aware, if any one of us is to resign, they shut our NYT email is shut off. Your students, your NYT email stays forever. But if I leave NYIT, for example, my email address ceases to operate. I cannot access my NYIT account. I cannot access the office. I'll be escorted off because I'm not supposed to steal student records, university records, school of management records. I cannot take any of that. The computer, the files, nothing should be taken by me. So they'll escort me, in person, and I can't get inside the premises again. I can walk in like a visitor later. Now, no access. So that's how the controls work. So again, feed forward, ensuring management's commitment to functional, not functional or dysfunctional work environment, provide employee assistance programs so that they can deal with their behavioral problems, create a policy against rage, aggression, or violence, pre-hiring screening. As I said, they look at your criminal record, cases, instances of reported sexual harassment, workplace discrimination, all those kinds of things are looked into. I've seen those. I've been here in the United States only since 2018, but I had a chance to see those reports and I'm like, wow, those guys are getting reports from different states, from different banks, from different organizations. Unbelievable. Your data, plenty of them have it. So you being a good citizen helps you. You being responsible actually helps you. So I see a logic and why you should pay your bills, why you should not default, why your credit rating should be good, why you should actually pay your fines, not get into crazy situations, because tomorrow you want a long career, you want to retire, and you should not be forced into retirement because your record is so bad. So you want to be careful if you want to prolong your career and have a productive work life. I think you should be extremely careful as a citizen, and you have to comply with as many things as possible, right? So yeah, that's what it is. I talked about this management by walking around is a very great thing of the way you can walk around your premises at the production location or in your restaurant, in your business, walk with when employees are being, when they're interacting with customers. And this is a great opportunity for you to identify problems. And if you can fix them immediately, you should. Allow employees or work groups to grieve during periods of major organizational change. Be a good role model, you understand that. Corporate hotlines, suppose somebody has to report without feeling intimidated. Likewise, in NYIT, for example, you have a professor abusing you, being discriminatory, or you find some kind of workplace harassment, you can report and then you can approach the Title IX officer. And rest assured, it's going to be confidential. Professor will never know that you reported. So confidentiality is taken care of. They will, guide you through the next steps and make sure, you get the justice that you should be getting. So those are hotlines. There are a lot of officers who are there to take in that kind of information. Use quick and decisive intervention. You don't want this to spiral. Like, you had problems with Google, you had problems in Facebook about workplace harassment cases. Uber had some problems, a couple of years ago. So you don't want this to hurt your brand image and name. So you need to have people, law enforcement authorities, you need quick action, and you want to make sure that your brand name and goodwill is maintained. All this was again part of control, not to do with production, operations, sales, and revenues and profits, but it is about workplace behavior and deviant behavior. So controls can be everywhere. Provide necessary equipment, procedures with dealing with violent situations. For a long time, I wondered, why is that the airport checks happen only once you enter the airport building? Has anybody wondered about this? Why do airport checks happen only after you enter the airport building or the whole place? Why can't they check off your cars or taxis or cabs a mile away from the airport? Can they not do that?
Oh, I'm not sure.
But do you think that's a smart thing to do?
Nah, because you're gonna mess up the flow of traffic.
No,
Uh-huh.
you can have multiple inlets with the same level of security measures. You spread the traffic coming in. If you want to take care of, see, suppose somebody walks in with all whatever they want to bring in, the weird stuff they want to bring in into the airport, and then you start checking them, it can blow off even before they checked everyone, right?
If you do that at JFK, there's gonna be cars backed up more than usual on the belt. It's gonna be crazy.
I can
I see
understand.
what you're saying, where the checkpoints could be closer, but I don't know. I think at JFK, there's no way. LaGuardia too.
Yeah, but I'm not a big fan of everybody pouring into that premises, the terminal itself, and then there are hundreds of people. We don't even know who came for what. So why don't they at least, see, there could be an effective way the whole car is being scanned. You don't have to stop the car as they pass through a screening, technology that screens the entire car for any kind of material that should not be allowed into the airport.
No offense. Have you seen the TSA and the kind of work they do?
What
Not
happened?
exactly thorough to begin with.
Do they do that?
No, they're not exactly thorough in what they do to begin with.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone's really worried about it.
So I don't know. I keep thinking there are many ways that you have to think of using technology. I'm sure there is plenty of technology that can be used to avoid all these kind of things. Maybe it's going to cost money, but when there are, like as you said, in JFK and LaGuardia, and then you have so many people coming in, you could actually charge marginal increase to actually subsidize this kind of installation of this kind of equipment. That's why, because of the equipment, I just kind of in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, these are extremely important international hubs. They're like JFK, Singapore, all these busy airports. Anything could happen, crazy thing could happen. You want to make sure you want to avoid it way before they actually come into the airport terminals, right? Feedback, so you can have feedback, communicate openly about violent incidents, investigate incidents. HR can be involved. HR should be involved. If I have a student report to me about, another professor doing something crazy in their class, I will take it to the HR, because this is nothing to do with the course. This is nothing to do with, helping you in the class or helping you with do better in your grades. No, it's something about discrimination. I'm going to bring it to the attention of the HR. And then of course the HR can contact you and then protect your confidentiality and then guide you to the right officer so that, you can discuss this further without, harming yourself, but making sure you get the kind of justice that you deserve to. Review company policies and change if necessary. This goes on and on. So yeah, we're done. So any questions on this chapter, you can feel free to ask.